Welcome to the Coffee with Father Barry podcast. In each episode, we'll chat with Father Barry Fisher about his 50 years spent serving the Lord as a missionary priest of the precious blood. Christ's call took him around the globe, from the United States to Latin America, to Rome, Austria, and beyond. Father Barry hopes that through sharing his stories, you too will be inspired to reflect on your own unique faith journey.
Hi, welcome to another episode of Coffee with Father Barry. I will be your guide for today, Kyle McCreary. Father Barry, in your first podcast, you shared with us a little bit about your call to priesthood. Today, will you tell us a little bit about your experience of leaving home to go to the minor seminary in Ohio?
Sure, I remember that well. To go to Ohio was like crossing over the Appalachian Mountains, because in those days that was like the barrier. And to cross over the Appalachian Mountains in an old car on old US 30, because our turnpike wasn't all finished yet, Pennsylvania Turnpike. So we went over the mountains, a long drive, and I felt going over those mountains and coming down the other side was like going into the wild, wild west, because anything over on the other side of the Appalachians was the west for me. In those days, we began, I joined the Brennerdale Seminary High School, it was called, right on the outskirts of Canton, Ohio. That's where I met up with then my classmates. We were 150, 13, 14-year-old kids going in my class into the seminary. In total, we were 350 students that year, and it was the largest group of students they had ever in that high school. We began there. I was already sort of familiar what that would be like because I had been to that vocation workshop. Our classes we had our regular high school classes, and Brennerdale was academically a very well-rated high school in that whole area. And besides the classes, we had a work study, we had work program, we had study halls that we could do our assignments in, and sports activities. Those were very happy years for me. I never regretted going there at that age. Today, I wouldn't recommend to go that early, but in those days, that was the thing to do. I remember also thinking, I went with another young man from Lebanon, Pennsylvania. He was very much Pennsylvania Dutch. And I remember our classmates would kid us. They said, "You people from Pennsylvania talk funny," because we would say some words differently than people like in Ohio or from farther west would say.
So thinking about those 4 years at Brennerdale, other than the "we talked funny" memory, are there any other memories that really stand out to you that you'd like to share with us today?
In the minor seminary in those days, we had what was called the Silentium Altum. That was the great silence, which would begin after evening prayer or after supper and benediction. Then we would go to our study halls. And from then until the next morning after breakfast, we were absolute silence. And it was a very strict silence. And if you got caught breaking that, you'd be in big trouble. You might have to do the dishes for a week, and doing the dishes for a week for 350 kids was that was a penance for all of us. The bell would ring in the morning. Now, we were in 3 different dormitories, about 100, 125, 150 in each dorm, in bunk beds. Absolute silence, and you didn't break silence. You didn't mess around in those dorms, or you could be kicked out pretty quickly from that seminary. The bell would ring at 6:40 in the morning. It was so cold in those dorms sometimes when you'd be leaving the dorm to take the holy water. The holy water was actually frozen. So that's how cold it was. Anyway, we got out. We started down those steps. We were on the 3rd floor. You can imagine we were 350 boys. It was, I would describe it as a stampede. We went down, flying down those steps. Who wanted to get there fastest? Because they got sinks. We might have had 10 sinks. The rest of us, the most of us, would have to be content with standing around what they called a bird bath, which would be looking like a big bird bath with water coming out the middle. And there we were, probably 20 kids around that bird bath, brushing our teeth and spitting in that bird bath. It was pretty gross. But anyway, those of us who didn't get a sink, that's what we had to do. But what I found so interesting was that we were so disciplined that in 20 minutes, 350 of us were sitting, half asleep, but we were sitting in chapel to begin the morning prayer, meditation, mass that we had then before we went to breakfast. So that was remarkable, really, that they could navigate with 350 students so quickly. I mentioned also that besides our studies, we had work periods. So every year you'd be assigned to a specific job. My first job, I remember, was working in the incinerator room in the basement, all the things that we would, papers and so forth that would have to be incinerated. So that was different for me. But part of that job was also to take the big garbage cans out to give to the pigs. So I had the opportunity, and the first time ever, and the only time ever, to drive a little tractor. And I was there driving the tractor, hauling this garbage out to feed the pigs. To slap the pigs, I guess they call that. I don't know. But that was one thing I did the first year. Other years I had to clean the bathrooms, which was pretty bad. And also sweep the halls and so forth. The last year I had a more secretarial type job. They put me in the front office, a receptionist and telephone answer and so forth. But they were all good because it taught us a certain, a variety of opportunities to serve and to learn different things about life. One other thing is we could never leave the premises. We would come in September, and you were restricted to be on that campus except for vacation time, which came twice a year. At Christmas, we had 10 days of vacation. And in the summer, we had 2 months. Now, when we went home in the summertime, they gave us like a checklist where we had to check off, did you say your morning prayers? Did you go to Mass? Did you do this? Did you go to benediction? Did you, what service project did you do in the summer? And the pastor would have to sign off on that. And we'd have to take that back and to give to the pastor. Another thing, just mentioned briefly, all of our mail was censored. Every letter we wrote, was read by our superiors before it went into the mail. And every piece of mail that came in was also read by our superiors. And every once in a while, I'd say, Barry, in the letter you received from your sister this week, you mentioned something that you didn't say in your letter that went out. So I was caught. I snuck that letter out. So he never saw it because he knew I snuck it out somehow. Anyway, those were years when you could get away with censoring people's private mail. During this time when I was in high school, we began to hear a lot about our new missions in South America, a mission in Chile and more recently in Peru.
So then with that, and along with these memories that you've shared, when you began to hear about this mission opportunity in Chile and Peru, is that when you kind of found your desire to become a missionary?
Yes, I would say it was. There are two things that led to this, I think, to my decision eventually to become a missionary. When I was still in grade school, as I said before, I was attracted to the lives of the saints, and I would buy a couple of paperback books with the biographies of saints. And there were two biographies which left a great impression on me. And one was a biography of the North American martyrs, Isaac Jogues and John de Brebeuf, and all their exploits up there in northern New York and also in Canada. They were martyrs for the faith. That witness of them impressed me very much. And the other one was Father Damien, a Belgian priest of the Congregation of the Sacred Hearts of Jesus and Mary. He was a priest who volunteered to go to Hawaii, and he lived and ministered for, I think, 11 years with the lepers. He finally contracted leprosy and died among them. So those witnesses of heroic missionaries left that impression on me. So when I was hearing about our missions in Chile and Peru, I thought, maybe someday I'll be able to go there. Well, it happened much more early than I expected. When we were seniors in high school, our religion teacher came in one day and told us about an exchange program with Peru for college students. But we would go for 3 weeks to live there and to do some kind of service. Now, we were just going to graduate that year, but he spoke with the organizers of this exchange, and we would have permission to participate with the college students who went there. He said, don't worry about the cost, because I'll raise the money to go there to buy your plane tickets from business people around the area, benefactors of the seminary. So Rich Kaliga, a classmate, and I volunteered. We went and spent 3 weeks there. We were assigned to go to Arequipa, called the White City in southern Peru. It's called that because there's an El Misti volcano there, just gorgeous. We were there and we lived with families. We were immersed in the culture. And I think that's something too that stayed with me, the idea of being close to the people again, to live in a family, and then to go to work. We had manual labor. We were helping to build a seminary that they were doing in the diocese. So that was a very wonderful experience for me. The interesting anecdote that happened, I went with very little money. I think I had $100 in my pocket for the entire 3-week trip to get to Miami, down in Peru, and back again to my home in Pennsylvania. When we got to the airport to check in, to leave Peru, I didn't know we had to pay an airport tax. I said, I don't have enough money. So I got brave enough, and little shy Barry, he asked a lady standing in line, can you spot me some money? Because I don't have money for the airport tax. She actually did. I said, well, I'll pay you back. When I get back to the States, I'll send it to you. I think I did, but I don't really remember. Anyway, she paid me to get out of the country. And when we got to Miami, then I had to get a Greyhound bus for a very overnight and very long day the next day to get to Pennsylvania. I had $5 in my pocket, and that had to do me for eating and all my needs for the next, day and a half. So that was a very exciting experience, but something that stayed with me. And as is said sometimes, once you get the bug of Latin America in your system, you can't get rid of it.
Well, thank you so much for sharing a little bit about your time in seminary in Ohio, but also kind of that conversion story that you found yourself in of wanting to become a missionary and then actually being able to live it for 3 weeks in Peru. Thank you so much for tuning in today with Coffee with Father Barry. This is Kyle McCreary with Father Barry.
Thank you for joining us for Coffee with Father Barry. We hope you enjoyed these stories. Know of our prayers for you as we continue this wonderful adventure with Christ as missionary disciples.